And with that, I will introduce our speaker, Gretchen Zeigler, who was director of the Eureka Zoo before her retirement. And Gretchen will chronicle her gardening journey, adding native plants in her backyard, in gardens of friends, and at the zoo. She has found joy not only in the plants, but also in the ever-increasing array of pollinators and other insects that use these gardens. Please welcome Gretchen.
Thanks, everybody. Can everybody hear me all right?
Good.
Cool. All right. So thank you for inviting me, Paul. I was surprised to get a call from CNPS, because I really don't know that much about native plants, but I've been working with them for a few years now. I've been gardening with them, I should say. And so I'm just going to share with you my little gardening journey with all manner of native plants. And I thought I would suck people in with my first photo here, which is totally not my yard. It's just a stock photo, but some people were fooled, so my trick worked. Okay. Oh, and to go back, I don't know if I can, yeah, but I struggled with the title of this and I blew it kind of because it doesn't even say native plants in the title at all, but that's what I'm going to talk about, sort of. Another name or title of the presentation could be Confessions of a Wannabe Native Plant Gardener. I do have confessions all along the way, and one of them is that I love my non-native ornamentals like dahlias. I have a whole collection of dahlias in my yard, and some things that I inherited in my yard that are certainly not native. So it's a mix there. And then I also love me my invasive domestic feline terrorists and a rabbit. So I garden with all those guys on a regular basis. And I'm going to talk about those collars a little bit later. And I've got a frog in my throat, excuse me. So a little bit of background. I'm gonna go back. So I have a biology degree. I got it at Kansas State University long ago. And back then I already knew what I wanted to do as a career, which was working with animals in a captive setting. And I indeed did that. My entire adult career was working in the zoo business, various zoos, ending up here. And I got here in 1995. But back then, when I was in college, I was so dismissive of plants, just in general. I was certain that animals ruled and plants ruled or whatever. I didn't even take a biology or a botany class in my biology education career, which is just ridiculous. I don't know why the advisor let me do that, but I was just like not interested in plants at all. And I didn't really even embrace gardening until I had the opportunity to purchase this lovely house in Eureka, California, not too far from the zoo. And it, excuse me, it came nicely landscaped in the front yard with all kinds of non-native plants. And then in the backyard, it was mostly these beautiful, fairly new raised beds. And they even left me a cabbage plant in there. And so that was cool. And that inspired me to start gardening like I never had before. Oh, there's the cabbage plant right there, I noticed. And so I did. And I started just diving into these raised beds and gardening. And I quickly learned that I'm not a very good vegetable gardener, and that vegetable gardening takes a lot longer than the amount of time that I had on the weekends, which wasn't much because the job was pretty intense. So I started just messing around with ornamentals mostly in the backyard, and the dahlias, my mom got me into those, and any cute, cool plant that I happened to find at the local nurseries, I would buy. So my gardening aesthetic is pretty haphazard. And you can see on the left hand in the back, there's this giant Lenani cypress hedge there. It was a beautiful formal carved, hedge that gave privacy from the neighbors on both sides in the backyard. And I thought that was pretty cool for a few years, and then trimming it was just more and more difficult. So a friend of mine came by one day and said, Gretchen, if you took out that hedge, you'd have so much more sun and you'd gain all this space. And I thought she was crazy. And then I thought about it for a year or two, and then I got really sick of the trimming. And so I did. I took the hedge out, which was really radical. You can see the stumps back there, giant pile of mulch, which was nice. And I thought, yeah, I'm going to be gardening with the mulch and just rocking this yard. And right about that time, I approached a guy who became a good friend of mine. This is Monty Cade. It's a terrible photo, but we're up there at Strawberry Rock. For those of you that don't know Monty, probably everybody does here. He marches to the beat of his own drummer, but he runs the nursery at Redwood Acres called Lost Foods Nursery. And he's just got this great nursery and a great kind of native plant sanctuary in there. If you haven't been there, you really need to go, because it's quite something that he's done all by himself. He's an incredibly hard worker, and he's all self-taught. Didn't go to school, just learned this through books. He's an avid reader. And I approached him, one time to get some native plants for the zoo or something like that. And he just totally opened my eyes to native plants, and especially native plants as food. That's his thing. So we started spending a lot of time together, just going out in nature and botanizing and collecting seeds for his nursery. And he was just teaching me all this wealth of knowledge about how you can eat native plants and how to prepare them. And he recommended that I read this book. And probably most everybody here is familiar with Douglas Tallamy. Is there anybody who is not familiar with Douglas Tallamy here? Oh, okay. Well, so this is a great book, and this is a fairly old one. He's got several more. He is a guy that I think he's an entomologist by trade, and he's studied native plants and biodiversity in urban settings a lot. And so a lot of his books and his YouTube videos are all about that. I would totally encourage you to go home tonight or later this week and just look him up and listen to a YouTube video that he does, because they're fantastic. They're just fantastic. This book is great. A lot of data in there that he's done with his grad students, and reading this book, it just totally turned that light bulb on for me about, oh, duh, yeah, I have a biology degree. I knew this stuff, but oh yeah, if you want to support and promote and sustain biodiversity, you have to start with native plants. That's just the bottom line. And it just was never crystal clear to me until Douglas Tallamy came along. So hey, this happened to occur when I was kind of in between giant projects at the zoo that I had to oversee, like the Watershed Heroes exhibit. And so I had a minute to look around and go, wow, I can catch my breath, and what am I going to do now? And it occurred to me after talking with Monty a little bit that instead of just building a pollinator garden in the zoo with native plants and interpreting that little piece of land, a lot of zoos were doing that at that time. I'm like, I can kind of run the zoo. So what if we just do it campus wide? And so we created a native plant initiative and kind of ran it through our Conservation Advisory Council for their blessing. And it was just this perfect pairing with the zoo's mission of conservation education and conservation of nature. And so we created a pretty in-depth landscape policy that included things like, background information about Talamy's work, and just kind of the reason why, native plants were so important to the zoo's mission of biodiversity. And then kind of spelled out our goal, which was to convert the landscaping at the zoo to maybe 90% ultimately of native plants. And it's just kind of a ballpark goal. And then it also outlines what is allowed as far as non-natives. So we tried to be really specific about the criteria that we should use to allow a non-native to stay there. So the point being that when people came through, if we're doing our education well enough, and we back up, that people would mostly be seeing native plants throughout their zoo visit, and then we can interpret that. So we adopted that policy because I was running the zoo and nobody was paying attention, and so we started right at the front of the zoo with this giant Escallonia hedge that was there for decades. So that's an old growth Escallonia. And we kind of lost our groundskeeping maintenance over the years. And this thing was a monster. It was small children were being eaten by the thing because it was coming, onto the sidewalk, and it was a maintenance mess. And I also, when I was thinking about, should this thing stay or should it go? I was looking at it closely and thinking about what Ptolemy says about, how plants will feed insects. And sometimes you'll see holes in the leaves of the plant, and that's not a bad thing unless, it denudes the plant. But mostly he says if you don't like to see the holes in your leaves of your plants, just take a few steps back and you won't even notice, and it's true. But you want to see some of that leaf damage because it means that there's insects that you're supporting, and that Escallonia didn't have any, and it's giant, it goes all the way down W Street. It didn't have any evidence of bugs taking advantage of it. So it went. We mowed it down, and sorry, Escallonia, but we did, and we even stump ground it because you have to do that or it'll stump sprout. And to this day, this was back in 2017, and we're still finding little sneaky stump sprouts, but we're winning the battle. So we took it out. There were some people saying that you're crazy because the fence behind it was really ugly, which it was. But I assured people that, hey, it would be covered in no time, and it mostly is covered now. It didn't take long. So these are all the little baby natives that we planted along that strip, about 22 different species of native plant that we picked. It was just me and Monty going, what about that? And I was really new to native plants, didn't know much at all. So I was confident that Monty was picking the right species. And over time, I forgot to include a current shot, but if you drive by W Street in the zoo, you can see that it's mostly grown, even overgrown. I was thinking this wouldn't need any maintenance, but that was really naive because we do have to prune it. And we planted things like coyote bush, which are now, yeah, oh dear. In fact, there was a board member that laughed at me when he asked me if we're going to do that. And I'm like, sure. And he just started laughing. So we're taking those out now because they just don't behave in a small space like that. And the Ray Hartman Ceanothus cultivar, holy crap, do those get big. And they're also, some of them are dying. And I think it's because we've just had to prune them so heavily and they don't maybe like that. So some things are coming out, and what we're doing is just replacing those bare spots with things like Indian plum, which are super well behaved, and the low spots we're putting evergreen huckleberry in just to try to keep the fence covered and a little bit of privacy for the animals. So that was a big project, and the zoo is just the perfect place to do this kind of education. And I would just want to ask, how many people did know that the zoo had a native plant initiative? So half of the people, if I were still there, it would be my goal that everybody in this room would know about it, because it's just it's a remarkable thing. We're not done, and we probably never will be done getting it converted, but it really is an ideal spot to push that message about why it's important. That QR code, I don't know if that actually still works. The website's changed a bit, but it used to go to our whole Native Planet Initiative policy that people could read about. And we've got different kinds of gardens there, and interpreting that. Here's Monty and, gosh, is it Troy from Samara? I forget, or Eric. Yeah, so Samara donates native plants, and we grow them and get them to give away for Earth Day. And it's just the coolest thing. You guys give away plants too. It's just so neat to give a family a little baby native plant and have them all excited to go home and plant it in their yard. And you can tell them why that is so very important and to keep doing it. So that happens every year. Um, and um, and so this is part of the transformation. It was not without controversy. This is a magnolia tree that we took out. And as you walk into the zoo, if you've been there, you'll maybe notice that there was this very small grove of magnolias planted by my predecessor. And in my opinion, they always look sickly, especially if you go to where they're native to and see what they look like. They didn't look like that here. And they were problematic in other ways. And they didn't have any insect damage either. So they're coming out, and our strategy was to plant the natives that would replace them kind of under the canopy, let them grow up a little bit before we just take everything out. So we're kind of slowly moving in that direction. And so there's still 2 magnolias there that are waiting their turn to come out, waiting patiently, but they are coming out. And then, around about the same time, I had an opportunity to have somebody for free take out an ornamental cherry that was right in front of the zoo. And it was a beautiful old tree, and it was a bummer to take it out, and I didn't want to either, but we didn't do it because of the Native Plant Initiative. It was an egress issue because it was planted right on the perimeter fence, and you could easily climb the tree and get into the zoo at night, which is absolutely not good. So out the cherry tree came. This was a couple years after we'd been rolling on the initiative, and people did not like that. And it was a favorite tree of some people, and they really were pissed. And so they started making noise to the city council, and I found myself having to defend the initiative, which, the council didn't know anything about the initiative. They truly didn't pay that much attention to the zoo before it started making a lot of money. So we could do a lot of things. And so sure enough, here I had to write an agenda summary to suggest that the council adopt it as an official policy for the zoo. And I was thinking, well, it's done, they're not going to do this because there's pushback. So I was grilled. I've been grilled many times in front of council, but that was the worst one. About 30 minutes of questions and people complaining and comparing me to the Taliban for having destroyed something so precious, and they were bummed. They were crying. It was hard. But we also had people advocating for the policy, and the cool thing about the whole thing was that I got to talk to the council and to everybody watching on TV and in the audience about native plants, and why this policy is key to the zoo's mission and why it should be part of the city's policy and all that. And sure enough, they adopted it. It was unanimous. So after 30 minutes of grilling. So there's a little bit of the policy. There's the council minutes. Proud of that moment. And I retired from the zoo about 4.5 years ago, but I still volunteer there weekly on Mondays. We go in, and the zoo still doesn't have any staff that maintains their landscaping. So And I wanted that native plant initiative not to be dropped. And so I lead a group of volunteers. So if anyone is looking for another volunteer opportunity with native plants, that's what we do most Mondays with the Eureka Sequoia Garden Club. But you don't have to be part of that club to join us. So here we are a couple Mondays ago replacing this is a really hard planter for maintaining plants because of the moisture levels. So we're just bought these from CNPS, and they're coast buckwheat and some dune knotweed. So we'll see how those do. And it's just a great collaboration with the zoo, the garden club, and I get to still, kind of make sure that the initiative is adhered to. But the new director, he's not that new anymore, Jim Campbell Spickler, he's a great guy. He loves plants, but he's not as much of a stickler for this policy as I am. So one day behind his office, I saw a crown of jewels, I think is what it's called, the horrible plant. And I really got on him, and he said, well, I promise to take it down once, right before it seeds. I'm like, oh my God, it's still a terrible message. So he took it down. And here's a whole bunch of flats of annuals after the native plant spring sale you guys do that Chris gives the zoo, which is great, very generous, and a great partnership too. And our garden club volunteers plant those, hopefully in time so that they can bloom for the season. And it's great. And we also wanted to try and put some kind of quantifiable science data behind the initiative. So we started doing bird surveys there. I actually don't have results from that. I should have gotten that for the talk, but I didn't. So anyway, I think that's an ongoing bird survey thing that the zoo's doing. But the coolest thing that I saw was last year, volunteering at the zoo with the native plants, was this pileated woodpecker. And in my 27 years of working almost every day at the zoo, we never ever saw a pileated woodpecker. And I'm not saying that it's because of the native plant initiative, but what also we've done is these last projects with the redwood skywalk and the bear exhibit, we had to not take out, but kill the grand firs that were around the skywalk and the bear exhibit because they tend to fall and do a lot of damage, which was not acceptable anymore. And they were old, they were getting old and starting to lean. And so instead of taking them down to the ground, we snagged them. We just took the canopy green part off and then roughed it up so that it would decay a little quicker, and put little slits in for bats and that's what the pileated woodpeckers are for, man. They're going to town on these snags of these grand firs, and it's so cool. And we've got signage about that. And wouldn't it be cool if the pileated took up nesting there? Yay. So back at my ranch, meanwhile, this is this is what happens to your backyard if you go on walkabout for 2 years learning about native plants and you stop weeding. And then the hedge, well, its absence let all the sunlight in, and so I decided around COVID time that I just needed to start over in the backyard. So I had a friend scrape it, which is pretty destructive and horrible. But we salvaged the raised bed timbers and we threw them in a pile. It was all kind of serendipitous because I didn't really have a plan. But it was this long mound, and I thought, oh, we could do a hugelkultur mound there. So we put dirt on top of it, on top of the wood, and then I planted blueberries and a little manzanita and some other stuff, mostly vegetable stuff. But there's another look at that's kind of the mound right there, and the front yard is still mostly what I inherited. I've planted some other super duper non-natives like an Asian dogwood, which I regret, but it's beautiful. In the front yard, though, I'm tucking in, that's a great strategy if you've got mature landscaping that you don't want to get rid of entirely. Just tucking in natives where you can. Excuse me. So this is a California fescue, and I've got a mock orange in the middle and some wildflowers there. And this is my naughty cat squishing down the. So cats are fun to garden with for sure. So this is my backyard now. I took that just a few months ago. I've got a vine maple there that's turning fall colors, which is great. And along the back fence, I planted kind of another native hedgerow along there to try and cover the neighbors and cover that fence. And it's coming in. I've got this incredible blue elderberry there in the corner on the left-hand side, and then a whole bunch of other plants. Here's the looking the other way on the hugelkultur mound, and that's a checker bloom there that the rabbit is investigating. The rabbit, come to find out, he's out in my garden all day, and then he goes in his hutch at night. And it took me a year or so to figure out what he was and wasn't going to eat. And the things that I know he will eat to the ground, I just have to fence a little bit. And he eats more weeds than he does the things that I want. So it's a great partnership. He's a good bunny. One of the reasons I bought the house was this apple tree, super old apple tree that's leaning at a 45-degree angle, and it turns out it's a king apple, and it is one of the most delicious eating apples, and it's could be also 100 years old. It's really old, and I thought it might fall over, but that was probably premature, so I propped it up, and I probably shouldn't have done that, but I've had people say that it should be fine, just don't take the prop away. But the reason it's leaning, here we go, Joanne. The reason it's leaning over is that it's had to compete with the stupid cotoneaster tree that was and still is the most beautiful cotoneaster tree I have ever seen. It's spectacular, and it's been there for a long time. And when I bought the house, I'm like, okay, you're coming out. And then I walked under it, and it's stunning. And it was even more stunning when I bought the house. But anyway, it's grown a lot. And so I'm like, okay, well, maybe, the cats like to climb on it, and I can climb up and look over into my neighbor's yard, and it's great. And I had a swing on it for a while, but I'll take it out slowly by girdling some sections of it. And wow, did that not work? I clearly don't know anything about girdling. I tried, and didn't do anything. And it continued to grow and continue to seed, and it's seeded. It's been there so long. The entire neighborhood is covered with the cotoneaster plants, and it's all my fault. And I'm horribly guilty, but it's still there. I'm really in conflict with it. I even planted a toyon because that's what the birds should be eating is toyon berries and not cotoneaster. And I'm like, okay, toyon, you'll be able to grow because the cotoneaster is going to go. And you can see that the toyon is also leaning at a 45-degree angle. It does get enough sun to bloom and fruit, which is good. But that's my super dirty little secret about native plant gardening. I'm just going to go through a whole bunch of slides. I forgot to time myself. Okay, don't worry about it. We're getting there. So just some slides about what I do have in my garden. Huckleberries. I've got a resident hermit thrush that eats on those huckleberries all the time. And then looking down the fence, the blue elderberry is behind us, and then that's a hazelnut. That's sort of my gardening strategy is doing one of everything, which isn't a super good landscape strategy, but they're fun. And I don't know what's gonna work and what's not, so you try it. Hazelnut's doing great, getting a little big. I've got some wax myrtle in there. I've got a black hawthorn, which I wish I hadn't done because wow, does that thing hurt? And then it's sort of intertwining with a willow, a native willow, because I planted them too close together, and then I've got an Indian plum back there, and this thing is I think it's a trailing black currant. Does that sound right? It's just this beautiful currant that has delicious berries, and it's just a lovely plant. And what else do we have? I still have some ridiculous conceit thinking that, oh, I've got a small yard, but I can still plant a tan oak. And so I did. And I also planted a chihinkapin, which died, and madrone in a horrible place that I had to take out, and just mistakes. And here's this tan oak now that's, oh, I don't want to take it out. I love tan oaks. They are so underappreciated. They're hammered, locally, and they're also super valuable wildlife trees, and they're just cool trees. So we'll see. We'll see how big it grows or how quickly. Here's my elderberry that's full of berry clusters, and I harvested. I've got a freezer full of berries in my freezer for, you know, uh, immune boosting. That it's really good at that, scientifically proven to be so. I share them with cedar waxwings, my favorite bird, and the pigeons. And I just have to time my harvesting so that they don't denude it. Sometimes I don't time it right and they get all the berries, which is fine because that's partly what it's there for. But and I planted snowberry, which I regret because it's really aggressive and it's growing all the way across the yard and it's really hard to pull out, but it's beautiful. And my rabbit likes it, so that's cool. There's that tan oak again, being proud. There's the Indian plum with a cultivar ceanothus. I think it's dark star in front of that. So that's beautiful. My service berries, I'm looking forward to harvesting some berries next year. It took a long time for those to take off, but holy cow, they're big now. And I think they're gonna give me some berries. This is a beautiful spikenard that is tucked in the back, and it just has that relief of different foliage and color in the summertime. That's just so cool. And then of course, redwood sorrel and miner's lettuce, candy flower, rabbit turds in there. He likes, he goes everywhere in the yard. I just planted the vanilla grass this fall and then discovered that the rabbit really likes it. So I have to kind of contain it with a fence, but it's beautiful. There's him sampling the miner's lettuce, which is just fine. He's a good bunny. And this twinberry is way bigger than I expected it to be, but wow, is it a wildlife magnet for white-crowned sparrows that nest in there, and the waxwings are all over the berries most of the year. So I think I'm going to prune it down a little bit to manage it a little better, and I think it responds well to pruning, so that's great. This is looking back. I've got a little recirculating stream in there with Douglas iris and uh, more iris, the blue and yellow-eyed grass. And I also planted some bulbs and things, which I forget what they are now. We'll see if they come back. And then on the north side, I've got Dutchman's pipe vine, which is just one of my favorite vines, and it's got all these flowers on it now that looks great. And in the back there is a whole bunch of honeysuckle, native honeysuckle that's doing really good. There's one of those flowers, such a cool vine. Oh yeah, another conceit was a canyon live oak that's right on top of my sewer line, come to find out. I'm like, oh my God, why did I do that? So I also planted the madrone there. So I took the madrone out, broke my heart, and yeah, because it was directly on top of the sewer line. And this thing I cut off too, and it's come back. And so maybe I can contain it into a little ball, which is a torturous thing to do, I'm sure, but that's what I kind of have to do. Here's a bay tree also in that same area, but it's almost totally shaded, and I cook a lot with bay. And the rabbit suddenly is discovered he likes to eat it too, so I'm just gonna keep it down. I'm gonna try. It's been there for years now, and it's very slowly growing, so I think it'll work. This is my favorite story of all. Monty and I and some friends took a trespass hike up to see the helicopter that crashed in the 64 floods. You guys know about that? You can actually still see the helicopter up above Strawberry Rock, but you have to trespass. And so we were walking on Green Diamond, brand new logging road that went in, and it was, you can imagine the destruction on both sides. of that road, and there were these plants dangling down from the cut bank, and Monty's like, oh my God, those are Pacific rhododendrons. And he says, I don't see those very often. And so we just rescued some, I guess. And I stuck them here and there in the yard and then forgot about them. But I did watch one die, and I thought, well, he didn't think they'd live either because they were in bad shape. And I forgot about it completely. And last year, I'm like, what is this plant that's growing here? I don't know my plants well enough to really identify them even yet. And I'm like, that just looks like a rhodie, but how would a rhodie have gotten here? And so then I did ID it, and it's a Pacific rhododendron, by golly. And it's about to flower. Doo. And so, and I don't even know what the flowers look like because I don't know this plant, but I know it's a native rhododendron. So we'll see how it goes. And so the insects that are thronging in my backyard, I mean, in the last couple of years, and I don't know if it's because of all the natives, but and I certainly don't do photo documentation well, but these are the few photos that I have of wildlife in my backyard. But this summer, man, it was just buzzing all day, every day, and all night. It was just a lot of insects happening in there. But these slides are mostly insects on non-native plants. So this is bindweed. And I don't even know what caterpillar that is. I don't think Pete is here. Does anybody know what that is? Hopefully it's not an invasive caterpillar. But the bindweed is something that I'm yanking out all the time. This is a Townsend's warbler gleaning the caterpillars off of my lemon tree. Thank you very much. That's a great service. Beautiful birds, a sphinx moth, and it's on a potato vine, which I'm also trying to eradicate out of my yard. That's a hard one. I've got a hummingbird. It's kind of hard to see, but the rock is behind it, feeding from an ornamental plant of some kind. And now every summer I see at least once I see a praying mantis just storming through the yard. So I clear the cats out and I watch it for a while until it flies off like a helicopter. So cool. And he's on the manzanita there. And these are the band-tailed pigeons that have discovered, these are the neighborhood pigeons. We have a small flock, and they discovered the elderberry last year, and they tend to descend on the plant and then they break it. They break the things off. So, yeah, but they're so beautiful. They're so cool that they can do that. And people, people have said, oh, blue elderberry don't grow, or at least they don't fruit in Eureka, but that's not true. Clearly, I'm now harvesting not only the berries but the flowers for elderflower, whatever. It's delicious. This is the only frog I've ever seen in the yard. I only saw him for a day or two. Don't know why, but it was cool. And then, of course, the skunks, which I love. And I've tried to grow wildflowers from seed, and I've just failed almost miserably, except in the front yard, which is where the rabbit can't go. And so I think the rabbit is just taking care of those starts when they come up. And I can't even identify a native seedling wildflower, so I don't know what he's eating. But anyway, he can eat what he wants for the most part. This is a list of just what I came up with walking through the yard yesterday of and it's not a total list, but most of these have survived. I've planted things that I've then forgotten about because they didn't survive. So that's native gardening for you, or any gardening, actually. So I'm almost done. Just go through, I'll tell you about those collars. So these cats, they do go outside during the day. And I know it's quite problematic, but that's what they do. And I've discovered these collars that are incredibly effective at keeping birds alerted to their presence because they hone in on the colors. I've tried bibs. Those don't work that well. Cats hate them. Bells don't work. These things work. They work really, really well. They're not 100% effective, but if you've got an outdoor cat, that's what they should be wearing. And the cats don't seem to mind. Here's a friend who has a postage size stamp backyard in his apartment, and there wasn't much in there. So I badgered him to let me plant natives. And it's a terrible picture, but it is a jungle in the summertime of red twig dogwood and red flowering currants and honeysuckle and just all kinds of good stuff. And hummingbirds come in there. It's great. And another friend wanted me to do native plants along his border, his trailer. And then I had a good friend who unfortunately passed away last year, but he wanted to convert the lawn, so we did that. And then planted mostly low-growing ceanothus and manzanita and some blueberries that he wanted. And this is what it was starting to look like. Or no, this is now. So the new owners have not taken out the stuff in the middle, which is great. So I hope that they're gonna not put the lawn back in. And that's right by the zoo. It was a friend, I just planted this for her this summer. Doesn't look like much, but as far as she had her rabbits, and so the soil is really fertile. And the columbine, man, I've never seen columbine grow as well as these guys have. And then I've got huckleberry and red flowering currant and an Indian plum in the back. So that'll take off here soon. And my miner's lettuce is coming in nicely, which is good because I eat that. It's really easy to grow in your backyard, and it's also a nice grass suppressant if you want ground cover. It's really easy to pull up, so if it's in your way, just pull it out. And it's good because I'm about to give an Ollie class on growing and harvesting and cooking with native plants. And that's in March, and this is sort of the menu that I think I'm going to do, which is a little bit of manzanita sugar, manzanita cider, the miner's lettuce salad, maybe something with stinging nettle. I haven't figured that out yet. That's elderberry elixir, really delicious. And then bay leaf ice cream, which is the best ice cream you've ever had, and sprinkled with bay nuts on top. And then acorn bread. And it should be a delicious class. So check that out if you're interested. And that's my last slide. If you plant native plants, you'll have rainbows. All right. Any questions? Oh, perfect timing. Yeah. Oh, the choke cherry. How's it doing? It's growing well. I got one berry off of it last year. So, but it's happy. Yeah, I don't. No, I probably got it from Monty. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I tried to, but she asked how the choke cherry was doing, and it's growing well, but just not fruiting really well yet. It's beautiful. Maybe, but I'm out there a lot. I looked. It had a few clusters of flowers, but only one turned into a berry that I could tell. Yeah. So far, that you thought would do well, isn't it, or maybe some things about them all? Well, geez, my memory is terrible, so I'll put some things in there and then just kind of forget. I need to map it out. I need to document it, and I haven't. So, surprise, that's not a very effective way of gardening. But the rhododendron was still just a total surprise to me that it's there, that it survived, that I just noticed it now, and then it's gonna bloom here soon. But the miner's lettuce is just a piece of cake. It's a beautiful plant, and it's edible. It's super nutritious, and it's a great ground cover and weed suppressant. So I mean, that is just a huge success story, I think, and it's just a super easy, accessible thing people can do. So I don't know. I'm probably not answering your question of the big surprise that you wondered about. Yes. To repeat the question. I'm going backwards. Sorry. Anybody else? Way back there.
Comment on zoos hedge be big.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I'm really happy to have it. I've followed it over the years, because I remember when that Escalon used to be there, and when we moved the sidewalk.
Yeah, consuming children. Right.
And they were all native plants. That's so. One of the things I noticed a week or so, at the walk by there, there's working plant, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
Had a bunch of fruits.
Oh, is that right? Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. It is. It was just the best thing. And, I struggled just learning what those all were. We planted them in the wintertime and then they started growing. And so I had to have Monty come by several times and remind me what those are. I think I got most of them down, but I think I forgot about the crabapple. And those are great, great edibles too. I mean, you can make good cider out of those crab apples. So maybe I will go try them out. Thanks. Anybody else? I think it's refreshment time, right? Oh, one more. Oh gosh, he was a rescue rabbit and they had called him Flash. Yeah, Flash, and I don't call him Flash. I just call him Bunny, Bun. He's the cutest rabbit ever. He's just great. Yeah. Oh. Well, that's a little bit of a story. It won't take long, but
Maybe you can discuss that over refreshments.
yeah, we'll
How's
talk
that?
about the rabbit. Oh,
Oh,
it'll be real quick. Okay, so I got him. He wasn't neutered. I have a big cat. I could show you videos, but I won't. But my big cat thought this was a prey opportunity, and then he learned otherwise. And the rabbit took him down to the ground to breed him. So I rushed him to the vet to get him neutered, and now they get along great. About that. They do. They chase each other.
so that was worth the story worth hearing. Thank you.
We're good.
Well, thank you for everything all you've shared.
You're welcome.
Procedure.
It was my pleasure. I'm gonna turn this off. Right.
Um,